I'm going to start this video off with a little ad read to pay the bills and whatnot. The sponsor for today's video is water. Yes, H2O, water. Drink it, stay hydrated, and don't litter. Okay, onto the video. There was a manga produced on this planet in the 70s that would make even J. Robert Oppenheimer eat his heart out. The idea of a Hulk manga written by the co-creator of Lone Wolf and Cub feels like an obscure piece of comics history that was produced in the death grip of a fever dream. In the 70s, Marvel had Japanese manga creators tell their own versions of stories with their well-known characters. One of those manga was Haruku MONSUTAA KOMIKU, which was written by Lone Wolf and Cub scribe Kazuo Koike with art by Yoshihiro Morifuji. It had a short run between 1970 to 1971 in the pages of the equally short-lived Weekly Bokura Magazine, a spin-off of Weekly Shonen Magazine which began in 1959. Weekly Shonen Magazine was a top-ranking anthology until Weekly Shonen Jump knocked it off its pedestal. Shonen Jump doesn't need any introduction though. Another instance of Marvel Mangafication during this time is Spider-Man, published by Kodansha between 1970 to 1971, which was written by Kosei Ono and Kazumasa Hirai with art by RYOICHI IKEGAMI. IKEGAMI's Spider-Man learns to deal with his powers after accidentally killing someone with them. Like with Haruku, the Spider-Man manga is darker than the original American version and covers more mature themes. Koike's take on the Jade Giant fits in with his usual melodramatic storytelling. While the Haruku story superficially follows the original plot from 1962's Incredible Hulk #1 by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, there's one major difference. The story does not follow Bruce Banner. Instead, it focuses on Dr. Araki, a scientist and survivor of Hiroshima who goes to Nevada to work on the Gamma Bomb. Characters like General Ross and the Russian scientist and saboteur Igor keep their original names. Other supporting characters like Betty Ross and Rick Jones are changed to Mitsuko and Riki Tenda. Other similarities between Haruku and the Incredible Hulk #1 include a scientist testing a gamma bomb on a desert military base. Said scientist sees a teenager loitering on the test site for some reason and rushes to save him. The Russian spy sabotages the bomb test, resulting in a catastrophic explosion which changes the scientist's life forever. Araki, being a Japanese scientist from Hiroshima who builds a nuclear weapon for the United States, makes him a compelling walking contradiction, setting up a morally gray conflict, whereas Bruce Banner is more cut and dry and almost a stock character in his debut issue. Then again, every character needs to start somewhere. Koike excels in writing morally gray characters. A lot of his characters, while human beings, fit the monster quality. I'm not using monster literally in this scenario to describe a large raging beast, more like the qualities and behaviors that people might find frightening. For example, Ogami Ito from Lone Wolf and Cub by Koike and Goseki Kojima is an executioner who leaves a mountain of bodies behind wherever he goes. Yo Hinamura from Crying Freeman by Koike and Ryoichi Ikegami is a hitman trained to obey his masters. While both kill, they aren't doing it out of enjoyment. They feel regret, yet they know there's no other choice. The Freeman sheds a tear for his victims. The Lone Wolf has shown immense remorse when witnessing the deaths of those he doesn't see as guilty. He regularly kills to defend the powerless too. One of the most impactful scenes in Lone Wolf and Cub is when Ogami Ito's son Daigoro witnesses his father break into tears after killing his former student. It's not that Ito wanted to spill blood. His circumstances of being hunted by his government put him at odds with friend and foe alike. Haruku's characterization is similar to Crying Freeman and Lone Wolf. Only difference is he's a literal monster. He's like the physical embodiment of the grief of an entire nation, hunted by a world he didn't want to be in to begin with. The artwork in Haruku depicts an oversized child, less monster who causes property damage and more physical embodiment of trauma, anti-war sentiment, and the physical and psychological burdens those entail. Haruku wanders the black and white pages in deep introspection. This is a common theme amongst protagonists written by Kazuo Koike. The internal narration in his story speaks volumes about characters who aren't exactly verbose. Koike is masterful at diving into the psyches of his characters on an empathetic level. Haruku is a psychological and sociological character study of the Hulk and his context in post-World War II Japanese history, not just a straight-up monster comic. Morifuji's art is fluid. There's an innocence to it that carries emotional gravity. That said, it's funny because certain scenes in the manga contain straight rip-offs of longtime Hulk artist Herb Trimpe. Trimpe's faces are shamelessly slapped onto Morifuji's art. It's kind of comical that they don't even try to hide it. Speaking of manga production, printing costs and crazy deadlines need to be taken into consideration. These things needed to be printed cheap and quickly. That said, black and white adds an oppressive introspective quality to the story. Behind the monstrous exterior and property damage, the Hulk is a human story fueled by anti-war sentiment with social and psychological commentary. The Hulk and Haruku are products of war, yet they're demonized for existing. In the original story and manga, the green, sometimes gray behemoth is brought into a world that's automatically prepared to hate and hunt him, despite being the reason he exists. That's what makes Morifuji's panels of Haruku crying deep in thought with Koike's script so impactful. While Haruku has the potential to cause immense property damage to the world around him, he just wants to be left alone in a war-fueled world that refuses to accept or take responsibility for his existence. The Haruku stories haven't been collected, reprinted, or translated. Not yet, at least. However, the individual Bokura issues are out in the world. It's a shame that these stories haven't been collected like in a tankobon format. Other superhero-based manga include RYOICHI IKEGAMI Spider-Man, printed in collections and individual issues, Jiro Kawada's Batman, Bat manga published in the 60s during the hype for the Adam West series, and X-Men the manga by various artists published by Takashobo between 1998 to 1999, which adapts the 90s cartoon. All of those, aside from Haruku, are still widely accessible. Playing around with a character like the Hulk and translating him into a Japanese historical context might have felt personal for Koike and Morifuji. It adds layers of historical relevance and conflict that weren't around in the original story. I've talked and written about this manga for years, but wanted to break it down in video form really quickly as well. I did a video in 2020 about Jack Kirby's Monsters, which dives into the Hulk some more. It's a bit outdated, but I recommend it as a companion piece to this. I've made older videos covering Lone Wolf and Cub 2. The transcripts for all of my essays can be found on my website, witsnpod.com. All of my info is on there. If it's not listed on there, it's not real. The next video is going to be all about how a small percentage of people control the world's wealth and how they should be taxed into oblivion. Chaos ensues.